This is the Planning Board meeting for August 2nd, 2022. My name is Kathy Barnard. I'm the chairman of the Planning Board, and I'll start off by introducing the other members. Down at the extreme left is, my extreme left is Peter is Von Dugan. Next to Vaughn is Peter Goodwin, Mike Hodder, Vice Chairman of the Planning Board, and to my right, Brad Harriman, who is the representative from the Board of Selectmen, and Julie Jacobs, who is an alternate. Julie, we have two members that are not here tonight, and I'm wondering if you could sit in for one of them.
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you. All right, we don't have any public hearings tonight, but we do have several items for discussion. So we'll start off with the ADU, the accessory dwelling unit. Tavis, did you want to go through?
Yeah, really, this is the same as it was the last time it came before the board, but it has all of the updates that the board has talked about in this process. So really, the review tonight is only to say this is the document that would be available for public comment. In your packet right behind that is also a definition of a conditional use permit or conditional use. And also in your packet is a proposed text to go in the paper as a public forum announcement.
Okay.
So if board has any comments on any of those pieces other than the misspelling of the word conditional in the notice, I'm all ears.
Okay. Okay.
And assuming none, I can get the notice to the paper tomorrow, so we'll have plenty of time for publication before the forum on the 16th.
Okay, great. Yeah, I looked it over. It looked like most of the suggestions that we had made were in here, and it looked pretty complete. Other members, have you had a chance to look at this?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I looked this over as well. All the corrections and suggestions we made back on the 19th of July have been incorporated into this document.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, so Tavis, for the public forum, we're going to have copies of this. Is that how we're going to do that, or how are you thinking of proceeding?
Well, the way the notice is together is the planning board's going to have a forum to discuss amending the regulations to permit detached accessory dwelling units with conditional use permit. Public comments welcome Tuesday, August 16th, 2022 at 7 p.m., Great Hall, Wolfeboro. So I imagine what will be available for handouts are a copy of the draft. I'll print out the existing regulations, these draft changes, and then the definition of conditional use to be available. So the public is all commenting on the same thing.
Okay, so they'll have
I'll have those, the same notice and all the things I just described will be on the website as well as referenced in the newspaper notice, so people will know where to go look and find them.
Okay. All right. So I think when we've talked about this in the past, we want to emphasize that this is a public forum. We want to listen to what their thoughts are on this. But I think we talked about you going through the ordinance to start out with. Is that what we had decided?
Yes, I can do that, yes.
Okay, and, yeah, okay. All right, and I did some research on past zoning ordinances and regulations, and so I can sort of spin that out too.
All right.
Yeah, okay. Any other thoughts? Okay, well, as far as the forum is concerned, once we go through the preliminaries, we'll open it up for the public comments. And, I think it would be good if members of the board could sort of listen. And then at the end, when we've had all the public comments, and if people want to add something or explain further something. Is that all right with everyone? Is that okay?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we take an active role.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
All right. Okay, so is this going to be in the paper as a notice, planning board notice?
Yes, it will be put in the paper as a public notice, not as a public hearing
Right,
notice. We're
yeah.
not subject to the 10 days prior to, et cetera, et cetera. This is not
Right.
a public hearing, but it is a public notice.
Yeah, okay. Okay. All right, the next item is the short-term rental. And Mike, you were going to do some additional looking at other people's regulations and things of that nature.
Yes, I have. I was going to do just that, and then the short-term rental subcommittee decided that we were going to take a different tack. For future protection of the town, we're going to rely, we recommend the board and the town rely on the protections offered by the new definition of short-term rentals, which effectively prohibits them going forward in the future. As far as existing short-term rentals, we have no way of reaching them at this stage, short of changes to state law giving us some kind of an authority to do that. So I have reached out to Jeb Bradley. I wasn't able to return his call today, but I'll get back in touch with him tomorrow. Hope to work with him on maybe working on SB 249. I'm not sure how much input he's going to want or whether that's even something that he wants to put on his agenda, but I think that might be a way forward. That bill passed in the Senate with a good, solid majority, and it died in the House on a fairly narrow vote, principally because it wasn't recommended out from the Municipal Affairs Subcommittee. So I'm going to meet with John McDonald as well and ask him what in 249 was a problem for them and what could be fixed, and see if there's a way of coming up with state regulations which would allow the two good parts of SB 249, the registration process and the ability for towns to ask for health and safety inspections, and then maybe eliminate the poison pill, which eliminated all ability for towns in the future to regulate STRs. I think that's what killed the bill in the House. They must recognize that's the poison pill, and maybe there's a way around that. So long story short, the short-term rental subcommittee, which is you, me, and John, have agreed to recommend to the board that the board pursue no further action on legislation or ordinances to attack pre-existing short-term rentals, to go after them if necessary and if appropriate on the state level, and to rely on the protections offered by the new definition for future short-term rentals, which of course would be prohibited. That's where we stand.
Okay, all right, thank you. Were you also going to look at some other towns to see if they had any regulations for short-term rentals?
Yeah, I looked at both Laconia and Meredith. Both of them have robust regulations regarding short-term rentals. Registration process, best practices, handouts, regulatory functions, health and safety inspections, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And those are all for short-term rentals going forward. They did not prohibit them, as our definition is going to, going forward, but they regulate them in such a fashion that it can be rather difficult to set up an STR in either of those two towns without jumping through an awful lot of hoops. I think myself that what they're relying on for future housing growth are their pretty robust and also and well-regulated ordinances regarding accessory dwelling units detached, which we're now going to be talking about with our citizens as well, to grow additional housing stock on land currently occupied by a single-family home. Neither of the two planners ever returned any of my calls to them regarding short-term rentals, and I think the reason is pretty self-evident. it's a hot potato issue, and I think that they're reluctant to discuss it openly at this stage because it's still under discussion.
Okay, questions?
If anybody wants copies of Meredith's and Laconia's regulations, I'd be happy to email them to you if you want to look them over.
Okay, anybody have any comments?
Well, one of the things that I have been thinking about this short-term rental is that, you know, it would be wonderful if we could develop a policy immediately. But I particularly think that the board here is looking at this thing saying, we'd like to do it right. We'd like to do it so that we don't get sued. And I think that the measured process is a good one.
Good, well, that's encouraging. Remember that when San Francisco, and I think it was Boston, certainly San Francisco, attempted to regulate Airbnb back in the day, Airbnb sued the city of San Francisco. Clearly, there are fairly deep pockets out there. We want to stay away from any kind of fight like that.
Okay, so thus far, are people comfortable with what the committee is recommending?
I think our distinction should be super clear is we're not saying what company, what form, just no shorter than 30 days. And I think part of that suit was calling out Airbnb is a problem. Because any company can do that.
No, I wasn't referring to them as being a culprit.
Oh.
I was referring to them as having, at the
Countersued.
time, a fairly robust response to any apparent moves against their marketing. But we haven't done anything like that, so we don't have to be worried.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, well then I'd entertain a motion from planning board members that you do agree with the recommendations from the short-term rental committee. Somebody be willing to make that motion?
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Somebody else want to second it? Okay, motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so basically what we're doing is going ahead with the short-term rental definition in the accessory dwelling and then leaving it that and let Mike do what he just indicated he will do in the future, right?
Sounds good.
Okay, all right, very good.
I think it would be super helpful at the forum to stress that no STR or nothing less than 30 days would be even considered for the conditional use ADU permit. You know, that needs to be loud and clear because we're looking for housing opportunities and we don't want them to be flippable. We want them to actually add to our rental stock or housing stock in a controlled method. And so
I think specifically with that point, it has to be understood the planning board is also looking at recommending a definition for town meeting 23 to define short-term rentals as a use that is not permitted. And that would help the forum focus on detached ADUs almost irrespective of the short-term rental question. But I think it has to be brought up that ADUs, either as they exist or as they may be with the proposed language, will not be, you know, the vote on ADUs can happen with or without the short-term rental definition vote. So the voters have to understand that in order to do it, they have to vote discretely on the short-term rental definition article as well as the ADU article. So they are not linked by a vote.
So maybe, because when we redrafted this a number of times, number 7 here, under F, says neither the single-family home nor the ADU shall be occupied as a short-term rental, but we don't have that defined yet. Maybe until that gets defined, we have to say for less than 30 days.
I think the warrant article is going to be worded to express that in either 31 days or 1 month, whichever is less, or short-term rental upon passage of Article blank.
But what if this passes, this ADU change, but not the definition?
But I'm saying the warrant article on ADU has to be worded to accept that change regardless of the fate of the definition.
Right, so do we need to change the language here?
No, because this is what the board is recommending, consistent with its definition of short-term rental.
Right. So they work in tandem.
Okay,
An interesting question later would be, would that be a substantive change later or not, to switch from writing the definition in ADU or replacing it with the term so described?
That would be a substantive change, and we have to go through the whole process again.
Right, but that's not at the forum level, that's at
No.
the public hearing level,
No.
correct?
That would be fallout from the vote.
Right.
Could it be that there's no reference to the short-term rental, but just a statement of the minimum rental period?
That was one of the earlier drafts that said that, yes.
And-
The
and-
advice from council
and-
was to reference the definition in case that definition later changed. ADU would follow suit.
But then you, in fact, are risking having both of those passed at the same time. Because if the definition of a short-term rental doesn't pass, then where are you? The other one is,
That's what I'm saying.
right.
The warrant article for ADU could be written with either set of language,
with either what?
either version of the language, either 31 days or 1 month, whichever is less, or short-term rental.
Okay.
That's a question phrasing problem, not a revision problem at this point.
That's something we can work out subsequent to the public hearing.
Correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
I honestly, for reader ease, I think it's going to be more impactful if it says short-term rental in the forum discussion, as opposed to having the forum discuss, well, is it really 31 days or 1 month, or is it 28 days, and what about leap years and all of
And then
these
we
things?
tend to get ourselves spread out too thin.
Correct.
if we do that.
Okay. All right. Capital Improvement Program. Mike, did you have a suggestion?
Well, you all have in your packets something I wrote regarding CIPC guideline from the planning board, recognizing that this board cannot constrain the executive or the budget committee in the town, but it does have a responsibility, since the CIP subcommittee is a committee of the planning board, to offer some guidance. And most towns around the lake do offer guidance of a robust nature to their capital improvements committees. I wrote this to reflect what I believe to be the board's concern that, and I've heard that expressed here several times, that we appear to be, based upon whatever information we have been given, running up against a ceiling, low or high, I have no idea, and we haven't been told. We don't know for sure, that may constrain future growth based upon the ability to deal with our sewage and ability to find additional water sources. And it seems to me that if the board agrees with the wording here, this would alert the Capital Improvements Committee that the board is concerned about those two issues and recommends that members of that committee keep in the backs of their minds, if not the fronts of their minds, those concerns going forward. And that's basically all that that advice does.
Okay. Comments?
Should that comment about the current source of drinking water also say, and also dealing with the septic? Or is that redundant?
Well, it does, it has them both in here.
It has,
Pre-septic loading and also source of drinking water. So I had both issues covered in.
okay, so Is everybody all set with this? Or do you have additional comments, or do you want this changed?
Is something the board can recommend to the Capital Improvements Program
Right.
Committee
Yeah.
as its statement of guidance to that committee? Or do we need additional language, or do you want to ditch this altogether and just, give them their head and let them go?
Yeah.
What would you think about adding in for the boards, the selectmen and the departments to also look at, seeing if there's federal grant money out there too for these types of projects, along with loan forgiveness programs? I think there's a lot of other things out there too besides just, capital reserve funds and stuff like that. So there's other avenues to secure funding for these that, I don't know whether you would want to mention them in there too, Mike, or not, or?
I was a little bit shy about even throwing in future tax planning tools like capital reserve funds, but since the capital improvements program is a 10-year forward-looking program, and capital reserve funds are traditionally the way we build up war chests over time to pay for big projects, I felt I could justify throwing that in as a funding suggestion. State grants, federal grants, they appear to me to be short-term. You apply this year for next, or you apply next for a couple of years down the line. They're not the same kind of planning tool that a capital reserve fund is.
Yeah.
That's how I felt. And I also felt that kind of funding suggestion really comes from the executive in the town and not from the planning board. So I wanted to stay away from
Yeah, okay.
Is that
Yeah,
enough
no,
explanation?
makes sense, yeah. Yep.
Any other comments? Okay, then I'd entertain a motion, because the books for CIP are being prepared tomorrow.
Ideally, yes.
sometime, right.
Very soon, yes.
Yeah, okay, and it would be good if this could be in that book. So I'd entertain a motion to accept Mike Potter's wording for CIP guidance from the planning board for this next session of CIP. Would somebody be willing to make that
So
motion?
moved.
Okay. Motion has been made, and somebody want to second it?
I can second that.
Okay. All right. Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, all right, very good.
Could you put it on planning board letterhead and make it look pretty?
Yeah. yeah.
My thought was to put the paragraph on planning board letterhead and have Kathy run in and sign it and then photocopy that for the, I didn't communicate that to her yet, but now we have.
Thank you.
Okay.
I shouldn't have bothered to ask, should I?
Very good. Okay, let's see. That is pretty much what's on the agenda, but I wanted to talk about our work plan, because we're sort of getting to that point where we got to figure out what we're going to be proposing and what we're not. So can I just go through what I think the work plan is thus far?
Public
What?
Public
Yeah. No, well, I'm just going through the work.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's, I just added this to the other items. Yeah, no, okay, so we're talking about shorefront regulations, and that's in progress. CIP, that's going to be in progress. Water sewer impact of the regulations, we really have not dealt with that.
I don't know if we can until the survey.
Right. But as far as number 4 on my list, housing update, we're talking about updates to multifamily, inclusionary, elderly, and we've got down here housing density, but I don't really think we're talking about changing density and the things we've talked thus far.
I'm not aware of that discussion.
Yeah, okay. And then under housing updates, update definitions as needed. Okay, then the next item was the accessory building and the habitable space half bathroom issue that somebody brought to us last year. We said that the planning board would look at that, and I really think that we should have that discussion. And I'm not sure, I don't know if we're going to have time next meeting or in September, but.
Depending on how long the forum goes, there could be plenty of time next meeting, yeah.
Yeah, okay, all right. Okay, impact fees. Do you want to tell people where we are with that?
Very briefly, toward the end of last year, I had a preliminary contract put together to do some work on impact fees. I just got off the phone about an hour ago with them. They're working through briefly revising that scope based on some guidance with Kathy and Mike on having them spend more time working on the project than presenting to the planning board. So they're retooling how their proposal looks so that we can use 2022 dollars to have at least an assessment of where we are and some recommended next steps. And what form that takes, I can't counsel on at that point, but we're going to have a good leg forward with impact fees by the end of the year.
Okay, all right, very good. The other next item is master plan priorities, and Peter, I think you have that one under control, sort of, right? We'll do another. Yes. Yep. Yeah, okay, all right. Conservation subdivision regulations, I'm not sure whether we want to go ahead with that or not, because there are two others after this. And one of them is the lots without frontage, the back lots. And Tavis, I think you had told us that you thought you had an easy fix for that.
Well, and what's the next one on your list after lots
Oh,
with no frontage?
removing the C2.
Okay, so that's done. That's just going to be a warrant article.
Yes, right. So we don't really have to discuss that.
Well,
I mean, I guess we.
no, we don't really have to discuss it because at last town meeting, we moved all the C2 uses
right.
into Pine Hill.
Yeah.
Technically, the C2 district does not even have a boundary description in the zoning ordinance right now, so effectively it's not there anyway. But what the warrant article would do this year is remove all the language that is C2 from the list. So it will create a vacant placeholder, but that's already had the question worded, so that's done.
Okay.
So lots without frontage, back to that one, yes, that is realistically a very simple change. There are a couple of points I want to address with the board on that. Mm-hmm. And then I can bring conservation subdivision back to the board because it's actually referenced in the inclusionary ordinance. So I think we do need to address it, if nothing else, to decide whether it's listed under inclusionary or not when that separate warrant article goes forward. But I would imagine the first meeting in September would have space for both of those discussions.
Okay.
That's a pretty ambitious agenda, don't you think?
They're already,
Housing and conservation subdivision as one kind of related topic in a work session that has other things going on at the same time? To me, that sounds like an hour's worth of discussion right there, maybe more.
I think it's all in how I present it to the board as to whether it's an hour of discussion or not.
Maybe so, but I'll be willing to jump in with both feet, so maybe we'll need 45 minutes.
Okay.
Well, I'd be interested in hearing why none of them have come forward. What is the obstacle most likely mentioned or found that keeps anything like that from happening? Because it's in our ordinance and nobody uses it. There's got to be a reason for 2 or 3.
Yes, and I can outline those for the board.
Yeah, so maybe we're looking at 50 minutes now.
Oh, okay, so the bottom line is we have a few items.
Yes, and some of them are robust.
Right.
Well, remember, shorefront is effectively done after the discussion at the last meeting.
Yeah,
That
right.
just is ready to turn that into a warrant article. CIP is going to go through its 12-week regimen. Water sewer, let's just say that's on hold.
Right.
Housing is effectively done.
So I have a
Have you
question
sent the
about,
inclusionary to the council yet?
Yes,
And?
I will let the board know at the next meeting what the response is.
Thank you.
so can I just add on to that? And you said earlier that it was kind of done, the housing density issue, but the charrette and discussion
Well-
has been that we should look at changing some of the language in downtown zones.
Well, and that was a recommendation in the master plan, too.
Yes,
Change it in
so I
there.
will point the board back to the discussions where the board looked at changing various densities in the downtown specifically, and then a rather strong pushback from some public. So when I say housing is almost done, that is the changes that we talked about with multifamily, revamping inclusionary to include elderly and others, and then the related definitions. I wasn't saying in that we'd finish the discussion on density.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
As far as things that can linger, if you will, the accessory building discussion, i.e. what I coined the half bath on the ground floor, that's a discussion. It really comes down to whether the board wants to revisit that or not. Impact fees, I don't think is going to be anything other than some direction. I don't see that leading to a warrant article.
Yeah, okay.
Master plan priorities is not going to become a warrant article, so really, the heavy lifting is done, but for the 52.5 minutes we'll spend on conservation, subdivision, and lots without frontage.
Okay,
If that goes to an hour and a half, so be it. To preface the conservation subdivision changes, what I've attempted to do is rework the language to achieve what the planning board had, I believe, attempted with its existing language while removing some of the impediments that are having people not utilize it. One of the things to keep in mind with that is if the town originally voted for the existing conservation subdivision language to prevent growth outward, the town got what it's looking for. And that might be another forum discussion, because one of the things that's related to that is if development moves further out, is water and sewer in the right place or available? Is the police department in the right place? Is the fire department in the right place? Wherever those buildings land, I'm looking at the selectmen. What is the transportation corridor going to do in response to subdivisions further out than Wolfeboro contemplated, et cetera? So one of the things that might take up the majority of the 52.5 minutes or whatever it turns into is, was the intent of the conservation subdivision regulations to stop growth or stop development of the larger lots?
No, it
no,
wasn't at
I
all.
don't believe that it
Okay.
was.
No board would have written a regulation to that effect.
Right.
That would have been a dereliction.
We had
The
a,
net effect of that may have been to do that,
Correct.
but it wasn't the intent.
Right,
I will say there are at least 3 employees of the town that believe that perhaps was the intent, was to stop outward growth.
no,
It's irrelevant. Take it from the
No,
horse's
no,
mouth.
that's not right.
that is not the
We had a
case.
forum at Brewster in the boathouse. I don't know if you remember, we all sat at different tables and we came up, we had pieces of land and we all took the regulations and tried to design the subdivision based on the conservation subdivision. And I think there was a book by Arendt or some other, I think he might have led the discussion, in fact.
So if the goal was not to stymie growth, but to come up with a more conservation, subdivision-y, environmentally conscious way of doing it, that is something I believe I have ready to discuss with the board.
One of the issues that I'm aware of in that regulation is that I know of at least one housing development that took advantage of it, and ultimately those conserved lands end up being under the control and stewarded by some group. And that group ultimately has fallen to the Conservation Commission, and then they don't have enough manpower to really steward those lands. And so therefore, that's something that needs to be taken care of, either by allowing the Conservation Commission to have some professional who does that kind of stewardship, or to deal with that. So it's one of those issues that we have to deal with.
So we'll have a busy September.
Okay, all right, well, you all have heard the list that we're thinking about. Anyone want to add anything or delete anything? Okay, all right, then I guess that's the list.
The gauntlet is laid down.
Yeah, right. Okay, all right, very good.
One question, have we heard anything further about the proposed telecommunications tower?
I would not even move it to the category of proposed at this point.
Well, I have a letter here saying proposed dated June 30 in my pending file.
We were put on notice as required by federal law that someone was doing some investigation of a site for
Right.
what I will call an alleged tower. So I have not had any formal calls about site-specific property owner,
Nothing subsequent?
no.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other suggestions or? Okay.
Actually, I do.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I have an email, I say it's a very educated email. The zoning ordinance does not allow solar arrays as a use of land. And that's something, I'm not saying we're going to have a solar ordinance in place ready for the next town vote, but it's something that board members may want to think of. Again, there are just some general questions. It was specific to the residential agricultural district, which suggests to me that they could be treated as an accessory use to an agricultural operation, what have you, but that would be an expansion of a residential use, therefore a site plan is triggered. But people are starting to ask the question, what if I buy 50 acres, can I simply put a solar array on it, not to produce power accessory to a home or what have you, but solely for the purpose of power generation? I've had some very preliminary conversations with Barry about it and how that may or may not work. Again, there's MED and all the other neighboring, as you get closer to different town lines, different utilities come into play. But something the board may want to think about is, should or could solar arrays become a use?
Or wind.
Well, we do have a small wind energy ordinance. We don't have a solar ordinance. So,
Okay.
I mean, standard fare is I want to put solar panels on my roof. That's very simple. But I've had 2 phone calls so far this year of people saying, I want a 50-acre solar array. Can I do that? Because right now my answer is, well, it's not a listed use. You'd have to obtain a variance and then likely go through site plan review, et cetera, because it's not a residential use. Is that the avenue that Wolfeboro wants? Is that what Wolfeboro expects? What guidance does the planning board want to share? Once I get everything else done on the work plan list, I'm happy to look into that, but I wanted the board members to think it might be something that's going to be on the horizon. Pardon.
Right. Right, and there's no way that could be ready this year.
It could.
No,
Well, yeah,
I don't know if it would be right. I
Yeah.
think,
No.
I
Right.
honestly think it would be more easily achieved than a short-term rental ordinance for Wolfeboro. There are many municipalities that have model solar ordinances, and there are many firms that both do install and regulation help. It could help the planning board with that. The question was could. It could be done. Whether I think it's appropriate to try and start that in September is probably a no.
I would be very reluctant to put that on our agenda for a March warrant article.
Correct.
I think that would be way, way premature. And I am very reluctant to see a 50-acre parcel plastered with solar panels, movable or not, for commercial purpose somewhere in the residential agricultural district of the town. I'd need a lot of convincing that that would be a use that would benefit the town.
I think there's another forum on the horizon for that.
That would be quite a forum.
I have also heard from one individual that there seems to be, Barry seems to have some limit as to the size of that kind of array that could be put in. And I don't know whether that's rumor, that is misinformation, or whatever.
It's not necessarily the size of the array, it's how much you're able to have bought back, if you will, how much
Right.
able you're put back onto the grid.
Okay.
So,
Okay, anything else you? Okay, I think we've got enough to go on for now. Okay, public comment.
Is it on?
Yes.
There you go.
Are you going to send that letter to the Board of Selectmen about your CIP guidance? And will that go to the department heads? That's where the Board of Selectmen's guidelines go, so they have something to look at. And if you don't get it to them, it's going to be hard for them to look at it.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
It'll
Okay,
go to
so
the department heads. It'll go-
Department heads and the Board of Selectmen.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and be in our packet. So, yeah, right, yeah, okay. Okay, all right, minutes,
I have some suggestions.
July 19th.
Want me to start? My turn today.
Go ahead.
First page. Halfway down, it says Julie Jacobs will be a voting member. The next line down,
Wait. Where are you? Sorry, I can't.
first
Oh.
page, put your glasses on.
Yeah.
Halfway down, it says Julie Jacobs will be.
Yes.
The next line down, Mr. Ford spoke to the request to build a deck and stairs onto the back of 27. And then the next line down, I think we're missing the word "the" between the word and "to." And the 2 new dining establishments. Can I continue?
You got the floor.
Cool. 2 more lines down, it says propane tanks on the side of the building. It's actually on the side of the building on the next lot, which is covered by shrubbery in Kate Park. So the propane tanks are not against the building where the restaurants are, it's against the next building over in Kate Park.
Okay,
Let me keep going?
Keep them coming.
Cool. All right. Page 2, most of the way down, conditions of approval. Number 2, applicant shall submit a detailed plan addressing, detailed plan addressing. Yes? No?
I know what this means.
I know what you typed it.
And actually, sometimes a detail is on a plan.
On a
It's just a
plan.
piece of a plan.
I was just going to submit a detail addressing, but I'm like, is that like a detail on your shirt,
It's usually just a little picture
Yeah.
showing some part.
In this case, it may actually just be 3 sentences.
Okay?
So it's a detail.
Top of the next page, first bullet at the end of the sentence, he is in compliance? Or is he compliant? One of the two?
What do you want?
Either one, I don't care.
compliance.
Pick one, Mike, you're the
In.
English guy.
In is easy.
In's easy. A little bit farther down where it says the AC units have been, oh, I'm sorry, it's the next line down. Trash receptacles have been addressed.
i.e. once he complies with the condition that's been addressed.
Say that again?
Well, they have been addressed.
Right.
By condition of approval number 2, he has to present a detail explaining how he's so addressing.
Right, but it just says, right now, it just says trash receptacles have addressed.
Yeah, that
Oh,
should-
Have been
We're missing the word
addressed.
been.
yeah,
Okay. All right.
keep going.
And at the end of that line, we should have a period with a capital H for he, I think.
Where?
The end of that line,
Yeah,
trash receptacles have been, and the applicant has met the regulations, period. He, capital H. And I got one more. Page 4, halfway down, right in the middle of the page, is the word form with a silent 9. Grant waivers and waiver request for 9. It's a typo.
Sorry, Julie, I can't follow that. Where are you now?
Right in the middle of the page.
Yeah.
The
Where's
word
line?
form has a 9 in the middle of it. Smack dab in the middle of the page.
What does the line start with, Julie?
Grant
Grant
waivers,
waivers.
grant waivers, comma, a waiver request form, including the letter 9, would have to be created.
Thank you.
okay.
You see it yet?
Okay, all set?
That's it.
Okay, Mike?
Page 2,
I missed one?
second bold, Mike Hodder. Delete the word made, so Mike Hodder moved. And further on in that sentence, end it so that it reads, all voted in favor, period. Page 3, second bullet point, the lighting issue at ING. In item 4, third paragraph, second line of that paragraph, I'll see Julie's grammatical and add and razor, delete the apostrophe after towns, or in towns rather, and change the word there, T-H-E-R-E, to T-H-E-I-R.
The STRs also shouldn't have an apostrophe.
Shouldn't have an apostrophe, thank you.
Just take out the 2 apostrophes.
Yeah. Page 4, ADU discussion, paragraph beginning, Tavis Austin presented to town council what had been written so far, and she saw no problem. And I'm done.
Okay, any other corrections? Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for July 19th as amended.
So moved.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, anything else, folks? All right. Okay, make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
All right? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.